Danny was a simple man. He lived alone in a small farmhouse in rural Ohio, worked as a mechanic at a garage in town, and did not ask for much from life. He was 32 years old, had rough hands from years of hard work, and a face that looked older than his age because of all the time he spent under the sun. Every night Danny slept without any clothes. It was just how he had always done it. His mother used to say he was born difficult, kicking off his blankets before he could even walk. Now, as a grown man living by himself, there was nobody to tell him otherwise. So he slept the way he wanted, with the windows open and the summer breeze coming through. That particular night in July was hot and sticky. Danny had worked a double shift at the garage because old Pete had called in sick again. His back hurt, his arms were sore, and all he wanted was to fall into bed and forget the world existed for a few hours. He did not bother with dinner. He just took a quick shower, dried off, and collapsed onto his mattress. The sheets were cool against his skin. The crickets were singing their usual song outside. Everything was perfectly normal, perfectly ordinary. Danny closed his eyes and was asleep within minutes. He did not know how long he slept. It could have been hours or it could have been days. But when he woke up, he knew immediately that something was very wrong. The air was cold. Not the nice cold of a summer night with the windows open, but a sharp, biting cold that made his skin prickle and his breath come out in little white puffs. Danny opened his eyes and saw only white light. Bright, blinding white light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He tried to sit up but could not. His body was floating, suspended in some kind of clear container that he could see through but could not touch. He was still naked, still exposed, and now he was surrounded by things that were definitely not human. There were 5 of them standing around his container. They were tall, maybe 7 feet each, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow slightly in the white light. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their faces were smooth with large dark eyes that had no whites at all. They wore long flowing robes of silver and gray, and they were all looking at him like he was something very interesting that they had found under a rock. Danny's heart was beating fast. His mind was racing. He wanted to scream, to fight, to do something. But years of hard work and hard living had taught him one important lesson. Panic never helped anyone. So instead of screaming, he took a deep breath and looked right back at them. "Well," he said, his voice rough from sleep, "you could have at least left me my pants." The creatures looked at each other. One of them made a sound that might have been surprise or might have been something else entirely. Then the one in the middle stepped forward and did something to a small device on its wrist. "Human Specimen 472, it said. The voice was flat and mechanical, clearly coming from some kind of translation machine. "You are awake earlier than projected. This is unexpected." Danny raised an eyebrow. It was hard to look tough when you were floating naked in a tube, but he did his best. 472. How many of us have you taken?" 471 before you, the creature replied. "You are the most recent acquisition." Acquisition. Danny did not like that word. It made him sound like a piece of furniture someone had bought at a store. And where exactly am I right now? The creature tilted its head slightly. "You are aboard the research vessel, currently in orbit around the 4th planet of your solar system, what you call Mars." Danny let that sink in. He was in space. He was actually in space, floating naked in front of a bunch of blue aliens who had apparently been kidnapping humans for who knows how long. It was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not to mechanics from Ohio. "Okay," he said slowly, "and why am I here?" Another creature stepped forward. This one was slightly shorter than the others and had markings on its robe that suggested it might be important. "I am," it said. "I lead this research team. You are here because we are studying your species." "Studying us for what?" Paused. It was hard to read expressions on a face so different from a human one, but Danny got the feeling that the creature was choosing its words carefully. "For many things. your biology, your psychology, your capacity for survival. That sounds like a lot of work just to learn about some farmers and mechanics, Danny said. You do not understand. Moved closer to the container. We have been watching your world for over 300 of your years. We have seen your wars, your diseases, your disasters. We have watched you tear each other apart and then put yourselves back together again. And we have come to a conclusion that troubles us greatly. Danny waited. He was not going to give them the satisfaction of asking what that conclusion was. Seemed to understand. Your species should not exist, it said. By every measure we have, by every model we use to predict the development of intelligent life, your kind should have gone extinct long ago. And yet here you are, alive, growing, spreading across your world like a fire that cannot be put out. Maybe your models are wrong, Danny said. Perhaps, but that is not the only thing that concerns us. Raised one of its 4 hands and made a gesture. The white light around them dimmed slightly, and suddenly Danny could see beyond the immediate room. Through a large window he could see stars. Millions and millions of stars, more than he had ever seen in his life, stretching out into the endless black of space. There is a war coming, said. A war that will reach your world whether you want it to or not. And we need to know if your species will be a help or a threat when it arrives. Danny looked at those stars. He thought about his little farmhouse back in Ohio, about the garage where he worked, about all the ordinary people living their ordinary lives with no idea that any of this was happening. Let me out of this tube, he said quietly, and maybe we can talk about that. Studied him for a long moment. Then it made another gesture, and Danny felt himself lowering slowly to the floor. The container around him dissolved like mist, and he was standing on his own 2 feet for the first time since he had woken up. He was still naked. He was still surrounded by aliens, but he was no longer helpless, and that made all the difference. One of the other creatures came forward holding a simple gray robe. Danny took it and pulled it on without a word. It was thin and not very warm, but it was better than nothing. Now, he said, tying the robe closed, tell me about this war. Led Danny through the ship. The corridors were wide and smooth, made of some kind of metal that felt warm under his bare feet. The other creatures followed behind them, watching Danny with their large, dark eyes as if they expected him to do something dangerous at any moment. Danny just walked. He looked around, taking in everything he saw. The walls had markings on them that might have been writing. Small lights floated in the air without any visible support. Doors opened and closed without being touched. It was all very advanced, very alien, and very far from anything Danny had ever known. Your people, he said as they walked, what do you call yourselves? We are the, replied. We have been part of the Galactic Coalition for over 40,000 of your years. 40,000 years, Danny shook his head, and you have been watching Earth for 300. Correct. Your world was classified as a developing system, not yet ready for contact. We were only supposed to observe. But you did more than observe. You took people. Paused at a door and turned to face him. Yes, we took people. We needed to study your biology directly, to understand what makes you different. Different from what? The door opened and gestured for Danny to enter. Inside was a large room filled with screens and equipment. Holographic images floated in the air, showing pictures and diagrams that Danny could not understand. But in the center of the room was something he recognized immediately. It was a human body. Or rather, it was an image of a human body, life-sized and detailed, rotating slowly in the air. Next to it were images of other bodies, other creatures, all different shapes and sizes. Different from everyone else, said. Danny walked closer to the display. He looked at the human body, then at the others. The differences were obvious. Some creatures had extra limbs, some had different numbers of eyes, some looked like nothing he had ever imagined, but had said humans were different in some special way. I do not understand, Danny admitted. We look pretty normal to me. Normal by your standards, yes, but look closer. Touched a control and the human image changed. Now it showed the inside of the body, all the organs and bones and muscles. Your species has redundant systems throughout your entire anatomy. 2 kidneys when one would be enough. 2 lungs, 2 eyes, multiple ways for blood to reach your brain. Your body is designed as if it expects to be damaged. Because it usually is, Danny said. Life is hard. Life is hard everywhere, but most species do not adapt to hardship the way yours does. Pulled up another image. This one showed a human heart. Your cardiovascular system can function at extreme levels of stress for extended periods. Your muscles can repair themselves faster than almost any other species we have encountered. Your immune system can fight off diseases that would kill most beings in hours. Danny looked at the images. He had never thought about any of this before. Bodies were just bodies. They worked until they did not work anymore. There is more, continued. Your brain is perhaps the most unusual organ of all. The image shifted to show a human brain lit up with activity. Most intelligent species have brains that are specialized for certain tasks. Logical thinking, memory, sensory processing. Your brain does all of these things, but it also does something else. It adapts. It changes. It finds new solutions to problems that it has never encountered before. That is just called thinking, Danny said. No, that is called creativity, and it is very rare in the universe. Lowered its voice as if sharing a secret. Most species in the coalition solve problems using methods that have been proven to work. They follow rules. They apply patterns. But your species invents new rules. You break patterns. You look at a situation and imagine something that has never existed before. Danny thought about that. He thought about all the times he had fixed cars at the garage using parts that were never meant to go together. He thought about his grandfather, who had built their farmhouse with his own hands using materials he had found lying around. He thought about all the little ways that humans made do with what they had. We do not have a choice, he said. If something does not work, we have to find another way. Exactly. Seemed almost excited now, if an alien could be excited. That is precisely what makes you so unusual. Other species give up when their methods fail. They accept defeat. They die. But your species refuses to accept defeat. You keep trying, keep fighting, keep adapting until you find a way to survive. And that is why you have been studying us. Partly, but there is another reason. Walked to a different screen and brought up an image of space. Stars and planets and what looked like massive ships, all spread across a map that must have covered millions of miles. Danny looked at the map. In one corner, marked in red, was a spreading stain that seemed to be growing larger. Who are the? They are a species from the outer regions of the galaxy. For thousands of years, they were content to remain in their own territory. But 50 years ago, they began to expand. They started conquering other worlds, other species. They do not negotiate. They do not make peace. They simply take what they want and destroy anything that stands in their way. And they are coming this way. Yes, at their current rate of expansion, they will reach your solar system within 2 of your generations. Perhaps 60 or 70 years. Danny felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. 60 years. That was not very long. His niece and nephew would still be alive when these arrived. Their children would be alive. What do they want? He asked. Resources, territory, power. But most of all, they want to prove that they are the dominant species in the galaxy. They believe that strength is the only thing that matters. That the strong have the right to rule over the weak. And the coalition cannot stop them. Was silent for a moment. The coalition has tried. We have fought them many times, but they are strong and they are willing to sacrifice everything for victory. They do not care how many of their own soldiers die. They do not care how many worlds they destroy. They just keep coming, wave after wave, until their enemies are overwhelmed. Danny thought about that. He thought about what it said about humans. about their ability to survive and adapt and refuse to give up. And he began to understand why these aliens had been studying his species so carefully. "You think we can help you fight them?" he said. "Turn to face him. We think you might be the only species in the galaxy that can match them. Your bodies can heal from wounds that would kill others. Your minds can find solutions that nobody else would think of. And your spirits cannot be broken, no matter how hard the enemy tries. But you are not sure." "No, we are not sure. That is why we have been studying you. That is why we need to know more." Paused. "And that is why we need your help." Danny looked at the map again. He looked at the spreading red stain that represented the... He thought about Earth, about his home, about all the people who had no idea what was coming. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. "We want you to come with us," said, "to meet the leaders of the coalition, to show them what humanity is capable of, and to help us decide whether your species should be invited to join our alliance." It was a lot to take in. Danny was just a mechanic. He fixed cars for a living. He did not know anything about galactic politics or alien wars or the fate of his entire species. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to let anyone decide the future of humanity without at least having a say in it. "All right," he said, "take me to your leaders." The journey took 3 days. Danny spent most of that time in a small room that called guest quarters. It had a bed, a table, and a window that looked out into space. The bed was too long and too narrow for a human body, but Danny had slept in worse places. Every few hours would come to visit. The alien seemed genuinely curious about Danny, asking questions about his life on Earth, his work, his family. In return, Danny asked questions about the coalition, about the universe beyond his little blue planet. He learned that there were over 200 intelligent species in the coalition. Some were ancient, with histories going back millions of years. Others were younger, like the who had only been spacefaring for 50,000 years. There were species that lived in water, species that lived in fire, species that existed as clouds of gas floating through the void. And then there was humanity, the discovery, the strangest puzzle, that nobody quite knew what to do with. "Tell me more about the other humans you have studied," Danny said on the second day. "The 471 before me." Sat across from him at the small table. "They came from all parts of your world, different ages, different backgrounds, different beliefs. We tried to get a representative sample of your species." "And what happened to them? Are they still alive?" "Most of them are. We returned them to their homes after our studies were complete. Their memories of the experience were removed to prevent contamination of your society." Danny felt a flash of anger at that. "You took their memories without asking." "It was necessary. Your world is not ready to know about us. If word spread that aliens were real, it would cause chaos, panic. Your species might tear itself apart before we ever had a chance to make proper contact." Danny wanted to argue, but he knew there was some truth in what's said. He thought about how people back home reacted to things they did not understand. The fear, the anger, the violence. Maybe the aliens were right to be careful. "So why did you not take my memories?" he asked. Was quiet for a moment. "Because you are different. You woke up before we expected. You did not panic. You did not beg or cry or try to attack us. You made a joke about your clothes. It seemed like the thing to do." "Exactly. And that response told us something important about you." Leaned forward. "We have studied hundreds of humans, but most of them reacted to their situation with fear or confusion. You reacted with adaptation. You accepted your circumstances and immediately began trying to understand them. That is rare, even among your species." Danny did not know what to say to that. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a guy who fixed cars and lived alone and slept naked because it was more comfortable that way. "There is something else," continued. "Something we discovered when we scanned your body." "What kind of something?" touched a control, and a holographic image appeared above the table. It showed Danny's body, transparent, with all his organs visible inside. But there was something glowing in the center of his chest, right near his heart. "We do not know what this is," admitted. "It does not appear in any of the other humans we have studied. It is some kind of energy signature, very faint but definitely present." Danny stared at the glowing spot. "I do not feel anything different." "You would not. It is not a physical structure. It is more like a pattern, a vibration that exists at a level we cannot quite measure." Seemed frustrated by this. "Our technology is advanced, but there are still things we do not understand. This is one of them. So I have some kind of special energy in my chest, and you do not know what it is." "Correct, it may be nothing. It may be significant. We simply do not have enough information yet." Danny thought about this for a while. He thought about all the stories he had heard as a kid, about people with special powers or hidden abilities. He had never believed any of that stuff. He was just an ordinary man living an ordinary life. But maybe ordinary was not the same thing as normal. Maybe ordinary humans were more extraordinary than anyone realized. On the third day, the ship arrived at its destination, came to get Danny and led him to the main viewing area, where a massive window looked out into space. And what Danny saw through that window took his breath away. It was a station, but calling it a station was like calling the ocean a puddle. The thing was enormous, bigger than any city Danny had ever seen, bigger than anything he could have imagined. It was shaped like a ring, spinning slowly in the darkness, with lights sparkling across its surface like stars brought down to Earth. "Welcome to the high seat," said. "This is where the coalition conducts its most important business. Representatives from every member species come here to discuss matters that affect us all." "And you are taking me there?" "Yes. The council has requested to meet you. Word of your unusual reactions has spread, and there are many who wish to see a human in person." Danny swallowed hard. He had been expecting something like this, but the reality of it was still overwhelming. He was about to meet the leaders of an interstellar civilization, to represent his entire species in front of beings who had been traveling the stars when humans were still living in caves. "I do not suppose I could get some better clothes," he said, looking down at his thin gray robe. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We will provide you with appropriate attire, but I must warn you the council can be difficult. They do not all agree that humanity should be contacted. Some believe your species is too dangerous, too unpredictable. They would prefer to let the deal with you." "Let the deal with us? You mean let them kill us?" "Some members of the council see that as an acceptable outcome. They fear what humanity might become if given access to our technology and knowledge. They fear you more than they fear the—" Danny felt that cold knot in his stomach again. He had thought the aliens were interested in helping humanity. But now he realized the situation was much more complicated than he had understood. "Then I will just have to change their minds," he said. Looked at him with those large dark eyes. "You truly believe you can do that?" Danny thought about his grandfather, who had come home from war with nothing and built a life through sheer stubborn will. He thought about his mother, who had raised 3 kids alone and never complained. He thought about all the humans throughout history who had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. "I am not sure," he admitted, "but I am going to try. That is what humans do." The ship docked with the station, and Danny stepped through the airlock into a new world. The corridors here were even more impressive than the ones on his vessel, with high ceilings and walls that seemed to shift colors as he walked past. Beings of every shape and size moved through the halls, some walking, some floating, some moving in ways Danny could not even describe. They all stopped to look at him, the human, the curiosity, the potential threat. Danny straightened his spine, lifted his chin, and walked forward as if he belonged there. Because in a way, he did. He was human, and humans had just as much right to exist as any other species in the universe. Now he just had to convince everyone else of that. The council chamber was the largest room Danny had ever seen. It was shaped like an amphitheater, with rows of seats rising up in circles around a central platform. Each section was filled with different species, hundreds of beings from across the galaxy, all gathered here to decide the fate of worlds. Danny stood on the central platform, wearing new clothes that had provided. They were simple, just a dark blue tunic and pants made from some kind of soft material, but they were better than the thin gray robe. At least now he looked like something other than a hospital patient. At the highest point of the chamber sat the High Council. There were 12 of them, representing the most powerful species in the coalition. Had explained their names and positions, but Danny could only remember a few. They had a seat. So did a species of large insect-like beings with golden shells, and who looked almost human except for their silver skin and completely white eyes. But the one who commanded the most attention was the High Arbiter. His name was, and he was ancient even by alien standards. His body was made of crystal, clear and shimmering, and his voice echoed through the chamber like wind through a canyon. The council will now hear testimony regarding the species known as humanity, announced. Representative, you may begin. Stepped onto the platform beside Danny and began to speak. The alien described the 300 years of observation, the studies of human biology and psychology, the conclusions the research team had reached. Danny listened quietly, hearing his species analyzed and categorized like specimens in a laboratory. In summary, concluded, humanity represents a unique case in galactic evolution. Their physical resilience, mental adaptability, and psychological determination exceed all known parameters. They are, in our assessment, the most naturally suited species we have encountered for surviving the challenges of interstellar conflict. A murmur ran through the chamber. Danny could not tell if it was approval or concern. Raised a crystalline hand for silence. The council has reviewed your data, representative. We have seen the records of human history, the wars, the genocides, the weapons of mass destruction. The High Arbiter turned his attention to Danny. You are a violent species, perhaps the most violent we have ever encountered. Danny felt every eye in the chamber focus on him. This was the moment. This was his chance to speak. Yes, he said, his voice steady. We are violent. We have done terrible things to each other. We have killed and conquered and destroyed. I will not pretend otherwise. The chamber fell silent, even seemed surprised by his honesty. But violence is not all we are, Danny continued. We are also kind. We are generous. We build hospitals and schools. We create art and music. We fall in love and raise children and take care of our elderly. We are capable of great cruelty, but we are also capable of great compassion. A member of the High Council spoke up. Its voice clicking and buzzing through the translation system. Compassion is a weakness. They will not care about your compassion when they come to exterminate your world. Maybe not, Danny said, but compassion is also what makes us fight. When someone threatens the people we love, we do not back down. We do not surrender. We stand up and we push back with everything we have. Empty words, another council member said. This one was from a species Danny did not recognize, tall and thin with eyes that glowed red. You have never faced a true threat. You have only fought among yourselves. What will you do when they arrive with their fleets and their weapons? What will you do when they burn your cities and slaughter your children? Danny thought about the question. He thought about all the times in human history when everything seemed lost, when enemies were at the gates and hope was fading, and it looked like the end had finally come. We will fight, he said simply. We will fight with everything we have, and when we run out of weapons, we will fight with our hands, and when we run out of strength, we will fight with our will, because that is who we are. That is what it means to be human. The chamber erupted in noise. Some beings were shouting approval, Others were shouting condemnation. It took several minutes for to restore order. "You speak with passion," the High Arbiter said when the noise had died down. "But passion is not enough to win wars. They have conquered species far more advanced than yours. What makes you think humanity will be any different?" Danny took a deep breath. This was the question he had been waiting for, the question that everything depended on. "Because we do not know how to give up," he said. "Every other species you have shown me, every other civilization in this coalition, they all have limits. They know when they are beaten. They accept defeat when the odds are too great." He shook his head. "Humans do not work that way. We have a word for it back home. We call it stubbornness. Some people think it is a flaw, but I think it is the only reason we are still alive." He looked around the chamber at all the beings watching him. Some looked curious. Some looked afraid. Some looked like they wanted to see him destroyed. "You want to know what humanity will do when they come? I will tell you. We will lose at first. We will lose badly. We will watch our cities burn and our people die. And then we will learn. We will adapt. We will figure out how they fight, and we will find ways to fight back. It might take years. It might take generations. But we will never stop trying. We will never surrender. We will keep pushing forward until we win or until there is not a single human left alive." Danny stepped closer to the High Council, his eyes fixed on. "You can choose to help us. You can share your technology and your knowledge and give us a chance to prepare for what is coming. Or you can abandon us and let them deal with us on their own. But either way, we will fight. And if we survive, if we somehow manage to push back without your help, then I promise you this. We will remember who stood with us and who did not." The chamber was completely silent now. Danny could feel his heart pounding in his chest, could feel sweat forming on his palms. He had said everything he could think of to say. Now all he could do was wait. Stared at him for a long moment. The crystal body seemed to shimmer and pulse with internal light. Then the High Arbiter spoke. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Perhaps both." There was something in his voice that might have been respect. "The Council will deliberate on your species' request. You will have our answer within one cycle." Touched Danny's arm and guided him off the platform. As they walked through the chamber toward the exit, Danny could feel the eyes of hundreds of beings following him. He had no idea if his words had made any difference. He had no idea what the Council would decide. But he had spoken the truth, and whatever happened next, that was enough. "You did well," said quietly as they reached the corridor outside. "Better than I expected." Danny let out a long breath. "I just said what I felt." That is precisely why it worked. The Council has heard many speeches over most of them are calculated, careful, designed to say exactly what the audience wants to hear. Looked at him with those large dark eyes. "Your words were raw, honest, real. That is rare in this place. So you think they will help us?" "I do not know, but I think you have given them something to think about. And sometimes that is all you can do." They walked back toward the docking area in silence, Danny's mind racing with everything that had happened. He was a mechanic from Ohio. He had never asked for any of this. But now the fate of his entire species might depend on what some alien council decided to do. It was enough to make a man want to go back to bed and pretend none of it was real. But Danny knew he could not do that. He had spoken for humanity. Now he had to wait and see if humanity would have a future. The council took 2 days to deliberate. Danny spent that time in a small suite on the station, trying not to think about what was happening in the chamber above. Visited occasionally, bringing food and updates, but even the alien seemed uncertain about what the outcome would be. On the morning of the 3rd day, a messenger came to fetch them. Danny followed the small floating creature through the corridors of the station, his heart beating faster with every step. He had done everything he could. He had said everything he knew how to say. Now he would find out if it had been enough. The council chamber was quieter this time. Only the 12 members of the High Council were present, sitting in their elevated seats and watching as Danny approached the central platform. Spoke first. The Council has reached a decision regarding the species known as humanity. Danny held his breath. It was not an easy choice. Many of us have concerns about your species, your violence, your unpredictability, your tendency toward destruction. These are not qualities that make for reliable allies. Paused. But they are qualities that might make for effective warriors. Danny felt something shift in his chest. Was this hope, or was it something else? The coalition has voted to accept humanity as a provisional member, continued. You will be given access to certain technologies and knowledge. You will be assigned advisors to help prepare your world for what is coming, and when they arrive, we will stand beside you. Danny let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. Thank you. Do not thank us yet. His voice was stern. This is not a gift. This is an investment. We are betting on humanity because we have no better options. If you fail, if you prove to be as destructive as some of us fear, that investment will be withdrawn, and your species will face the alone. We will not fail, Danny said. Words are easy. Actions are what matter. Rose from his seat. The other council members rose with him. Go home, human. Tell your people what is coming. Help them prepare. And when the time comes, show us that our faith in humanity was not misplaced. The council members began to file out of the chamber. Danny watched them go, feeling a strange mix of relief and weight. He had won. Humanity had a chance, but now the real work would begin. Touched his arm. It is time to go. They made the journey back to Earth in silence. Danny spent most of it staring out the window at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that was still to come. He thought about his life back in Ohio, about the garage and the farmhouse and the simple routines he had followed for so many years. All of that seemed very far away now. When the ship finally entered Earth's atmosphere, Danny felt a lump form in his throat. The blue of the oceans, the green of the land, the white swirl of clouds. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. We will be monitoring your world, said as the ship descended. Advisors will make contact with your leaders soon. The process of integration will take time, but it will happen. And what about me? Danny asked. What am I supposed to do? Was quiet for a moment. That is up to you. You can return to your normal life and pretend none of this happened, or you can help us prepare your species for what is coming. The choice is yours. Danny thought about that. He thought about going back to the garage, going back to fixing cars and living alone and sleeping naked in his little farmhouse. It would be easy. It would be comfortable. It would be safe. But he knew he could not do it, not anymore. He had seen too much. He knew too much. And he had made a promise not just to the council but to himself and to every human who would ever live. I will help, he said. Whatever you need me to do, I will do it. Nodded. I thought you would say that. The ship landed in a field not far from Danny's farmhouse. It was early morning, the sun just coming up over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Danny stepped out of the ship and felt the grass under his feet, the fresh air in his lungs, the warmth of the sun on his face. He was home. Handed him a small device, no bigger than a coin. This is a communicator. When you need to contact us, press the center and speak. We will hear you. Danny took the device and held it in his palm. Such a small thing, such a heavy responsibility. Thank you, he said, for giving us a chance. Do not thank me, thank yourself. You were the one who convinced them, made a gesture that might have been a farewell. Good luck, Danny. I believe your species will need it. The ship rose into the air without a sound and disappeared into the morning sky. Danny stood in the field and watched it go until there was nothing left to see. Then he walked back to his farmhouse. Everything was exactly as he had left it. The bed was unmade. His work clothes were lying on the floor. The coffee pot was still half full from the morning before he was taken. It was as if no time had passed at all. But Danny knew better. Everything had changed. He had changed. He sat on his porch and watched the sunrise. He thought about all the people out there going about their ordinary lives, working and playing and loving and fighting, completely unaware of what was coming. The war, the struggle for survival that would define the next generation. They would learn soon enough. When the advisors came, when the truth came out, everything would change. There would be panic at first, fear, anger, but Danny believed that humanity would adapt. That was what humans did. They faced the impossible and found a way through. He pulled out his phone and called his sister Amy. It rang 3 times before she answered. "Danny, it is early. Is everything okay?" "Everything is fine," he said. "I just wanted to hear your voice." "You sound weird. Did something happen?" Danny smiled. Where would he even begin? How do you tell someone that aliens are real, that a war is coming, that their entire world is about to change forever? "Come over later," he said. "Bring the kids. I have something I need to tell you." "Danny, you are scaring me. What is going on?" "Nothing bad. I promise. Just come over and bring coffee. We are going to need a lot of coffee." He hung up the phone and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, impossibly far away, there were conquering worlds and building their empire. Somewhere out there, the coalition was watching and waiting to see what humanity would do. And here on Earth, in a small farmhouse in Ohio, a mechanic who slept naked was about to change everything. Danny had woken up to a truth he never imagined, and now it was time to share that truth with the world. He finished his coffee, took a deep breath, and began to plan. The future of humanity depended on it. And if there was one thing Danny knew for certain, it was that humans never gave up. No matter how hard things got, no matter how impossible the odds seemed, they kept fighting. They kept pushing. They kept moving forward. That was the truth he had woken up to. That was the truth he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Humanity was ready for the stars. They just did not know it yet. But they would, soon enough they would.